Hi, welcome to Highwire Rhetoric, the first in a series of episodes in which I'm going to be live streaming every week at this time on Fridays, 4:30 p.m. UK time. And when you join me, if you join, you will be able to watch and participate in what I'm calling Highwire, because the idea is to take some risks and do it there and then. And it's rhetoric because it's about how do we construct writing, how do we construct speaking, thinking about the ways in which we approach building a piece of verbal stuff. And the combination of doing it as a rhetorical structure and also kind of high wire brings together two things that I think are really important for anyone who intends to do much public speaking and writing, although the speaking is more, I suppose, more high risk because you're right there in front of an audience, as I am now, right now, improvising in front of you if you're watching. Thanks for watching. When I'm teaching people how to make speeches and to do public speaking, no matter how high or low level that may be, I try to encourage people to think of two forms of readiness. There is the readiness that comes from having done absolutely perfect amounts of, there's no such thing as perfect, but you know what I mean, absolutely brilliant quantities of brilliant preparation, planning, scripting. That's one kind of readiness. The other kind of readiness is being ready for anything, which sort of means being okay with it if all of your plans fall apart, if you have to go off the script. And the combination of being really well planned and well crafted and using all of the skills of rhetoric plus the skills of improvisational theatre, in which I've also trained and which I will talk about more over the weeks to come. That combination is very powerful because it can leave a speaker, including me, but I hope you also, or other people, if you're just interested in thinking about speaking rather than doing it, and writers, it can give us the confidence to overcome the sort of perfectionism and the gremlin of who am I, that in a critical voice we can just get up and try to do the thing that we're prepared for and that we're ready for, even if our preparation doesn't work. So who am I? What am I doing this for? My name's John Paul Flintoff. I have been a writer for all my adult life, my career, as it were. I've published as an editor and a writer, feature writer, in many very well established English language publications. I was on the Financial Times, set up the magazine. I moved to the Sunday Times of London and worked for them, doing mostly features but sometimes newsy things. And I also have published books, and one of those books involved a lot of work training in theatrical improvisation, going on stage in front of people who don't, without a plan, and having to overcome the understandable nervousness that involved. And together, those two things led me to write a book. One of my books is called A Modest Book About How to Make an Adequate Speech. And I'm aiming it at that level of modesty and adequacy because I don't believe that everyone wants to be a super duper world-beating championship manipulative speaker. We just sometimes have speeches to deliver and we want to do it adequately. And in my experience, if you can do a speech adequately, you probably are going to do it more than adequately, and it will be probably quite good, because the obstacles that you have to overcome in order to be adequate are exactly the obstacles that are in the way of your being totally brilliant. So if you have watched even this far, I'm going to leave a little comment. I haven't quite got the hang of this live streaming software thing that I'm using, but I hope over the next few weeks to get the hang of it. So I'm going to right now, after how many minutes are we into this? 4 minutes and 54 seconds. I'm going to type a comment into the chat thing, in the hope that whether you're watching now or you watch later, you might think about leaving me a comment about what you might like to get out of this. Because if we were in a room together, and I've done this kind of thing many times in a room with people, and it's usually a great deal of fun, entertainment. It makes people laugh. It's risky, but it's also safe. If we were in a room together, I would ask you to introduce yourself, tell me a tiny bit about yourself. For example, what's your name, where are you based, and what are you hoping to get out of this? So I've already said who I am and what I think I'm doing, which is a combination of sessions that are meant to be interactive, that are going to be, I hope, fun and useful, and I want it to be both of those things, to encourage people to take experiments with writing things and then performing in some way, performing those things. So I'm going to say in the chat, hello, please introduce yourself, whether you're watching now or later. I'd love to hear what you might like me to cover in this session and sessions to come. Right, so I have posted that after 6 minutes and 30 seconds. And one thing that I'm going to do with these is put them out every Friday, probably mostly with a certain amount of a plan, because I'm trying to live by what I'm talking about, which is have a plan, have done some preparation, but be willing to go off course with it. I'm going to start the Fridays with that plan, and then I hope do something interactive. And a lot of the things are going to be relevant to all kinds of different writing and or speaking. And believe me, you don't have to be interested in speaking. And you may be only interested in speaking and not so much in the writing. Rhetoric is not a thing that people talk about very much these days, but for hundreds of years it was the thing that everyone studied, because it's about all forms of communication. So I hope to share with you my enthusiasm for rhetoric. Don't worry about the term, don't worry about the word. It's become a bit of a dirty word in the last number of years. People often think that rhetoric means words that are lying or deceptive or tricksy. Actually, rhetoric is just the science of communication. So I like that word. I'm going to use it, but it's just about communication. So don't worry too much. And what I was inspired by was in November, I think it was, I co-ran a course for writers, and the course was called Starting to Write. It was that elementary. And as it happens, a number of the people who were on the course had been writing for a long time. But I think you're always starting to write. Everyone's always starting to write. I've been writing for years, but I'm always starting to write. And it's a mindset, I think, as much as anything else. It'd be very boring if I knew exactly what I was doing, then I wouldn't be writing anything worthwhile. So I think I'm always starting to write. So it ought to be somewhat risky and a tiny bit of jeopardy, as I feel now, just a little bit, because I'm speaking into the void. I'm not getting any feedback from anyone at this point, so I don't know what you're making of it. But the idea of starting to write, anyway, I was on this course. It was run by an organisation, you should look them up, they're called Arvon. Oh, hang on, I just remembered I can do this thing which is really great. I can put the thing in the chat, and then I can add it to the broadcast. Let me see if I can do that. Yes. Hello, please introduce yourself, whether you're watching now or later. I'd love to hear what you might like me to cover in this session and session to come. I mean, sessions to come. But anyway, now I can remove that. Whee! No. So on this course, run by Arvon, which is a very well-known British foundation teaching writing, it was set up by the late Ted Hughes, who was a poet laureate, and many other writers. Some of the greatest writers working in English have taught there, and me. I have taught there sometimes. So on this course, one of the things that was most absolutely thrilling for me was a live exercise, which was actually run by my co-tutor, Elise Valmorbida, who's excellent. You should look her up. I'm not going to put everything in the chat, but you can look her up. Elise, yeah, I'll put it in the chat. Okay, let's see what happens. Her name is Elise Valmorbida. There we go. So look up Elise. Anyway, so Elise does a lot of good things in the teaching writing space, as well as being a good writer herself. Great writer. And she came up with this exercise, which all the people on the course did there and then for less than an hour, but let's say an hour, it doesn't really matter. And for an hour, what Elise asked people to do was to write a mini kind of saga of their life story, but to do it twice. To do one that was entirely true and absolutely about them. Another one, also written in the first person, I, blah, 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 was meant to be entirely made up. And so Elise and I went quiet. Well, the whole room went quiet while everybody, all the participants, sat there writing really furiously. You could watch all the pencils and pens scribbling away. I think some people probably had keyboards, but anyway, you get the point. They're writing away, and they're doing two versions of a story that both claim to be about themselves. And the idea was, although Elise didn't, I don't think she explained that at the very beginning, but the idea was that once they'd been done and they'd finished and everyone had had enough time to write two, Elise said, okay, one of them's false, one of them isn't false. Let's see if we can guess which is which. And so I still remember them very vividly. Maybe 4 people in the room took turns. So it was one at a time, and then there was a long chat after each person. And I think that Lynn may have been the first person. Maybe not, but she's the one that comes to mind. Anyway, doesn't matter. Lynn read out 2 versions, her 2 stories. They were both different, and I'm not going to try to remember what they were, and I'm not going to tell you her full name, so I'm not spoiling any confidences. It was just somebody called Lynn. And what I found absolutely, utterly, brilliantly exciting about this exercise was it showed you what makes writing really powerful and what makes it less powerful. We could all see it, we could all witness it and hear it and notice it. And although we were all trying to be detectives and be sure about something, and we couldn't be quite sure about something, I was absolutely determined that I knew which one was false. And I think I probably became marginally a pain in the neck about it, actually, because I try to step back when it's exercises like that so that other people can talk, but I kept on saying, I think it's this one. So I was really jumping in a lot. And the reason I kept jumping in was because the story that I thought was not true had so much less in terms of specific details. It was slightly more generalized. So let's say, for the sake of argument, it mentioned a place. It didn't mention a specific place. And if it had mentioned a person, it was a bit vague and harder to picture that person. Whereas in the other story that Lynn read out, you really got that person like instantly. Not because she went on in great detail about it, but because there was something very specific. So what this taught me was, in a writing exercise like that, people can sit down and in less than an hour write something, and everyone in the room could see why there was something really authentic about the real one and why there kind of wasn't about the other one. Now, with a bit of practice, and if you did the same exercise again, probably all of the writers, Lynn included, would bump up the quantity of specific detail in the invented story. I mean, that's how good novels are written, obviously. And so what I was really seeing was an hour's worth of people really making an improvement in their writing, like right there and then. And that's just so exciting. So I want to run these sessions every week to give people who come along a real sense of actually having achieved something in writing or in speaking. So it's going to be those 2 things, writing and speaking. They're all kind of the same, don't worry about it. You're probably not worrying. Maybe I'm worrying too much about you worrying. So the rhetoric of doing these things. Now, I did have something else to show. If I switch screen from my... this is a page on my website, Whoops. Ooh, I didn't mean to do that. Whoa, that's quite clever. I'm still getting used to what I can do on this. Yeah, look, there's my website. Amazing. But that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to show instead. Okay, this is my Photos app. Doesn't really matter what app it is. But what does matter is that this is a drawing I did for my book about public speaking, and it's a picture of somebody which I drew from a photograph. Well, actually, it was from a video. She was delivering her first ever speech. And it was really exciting to watch because I had spoken to this person some months later about her first ever speech. And she'd said, this thing happened, that thing happened, it went quite well because of this, and I practiced like this. So I had interviewed her about how her first ever public talk had gone. And then she sent me the video that someone had filmed on their phone when she made the speech. So I was now able to watch how she did it. And to hear, in light of what she remembered, I could now watch her doing it. There's something really interesting about doing that. So I was really excited to do that, and I was excited because I wanted to put into my book about public speaking the story of somebody who is a beginner. It's not all about people who've done these things for ages. And we all have something to learn from all of us. I really believe that. I have just told you a story about how I learned something about writing, about my own appreciation of writing, about my own instincts for certain things in writing, by listening to Lynn. Now, I haven't said anything about Lynn. Lynn might be an enormously successful writer or just a beginner. It doesn't matter. The point is that we can all learn from each other, just as I could learn about this speaker who had never done a speech before. So I drew lots of pictures for the book. Let's see if I can just scroll through them a bit. Oh, no, not that. Yeah, there's a picture of my friend Steve who went into the book because he decided to do a book launch by busking on the South Bank in London, and it was very high risk. He took a bunch of his books and sang songs about him and his book was all about creativity and taking risks. So this is another person who's kind of a bit of a, like, not an outsider. The previous person wasn't an outsider, but she was a beginner. So I think it's really important to emphasize that I am interested in sharing stories of people who do this kind of thing, whether or not they're famous for it. So of course, there are people who are famous, but even the famous people, this is my drawing of Winston Churchill delivering a speech, even the famous people have strengths and weaknesses. Churchill was brilliant on the prepared rhetoric. I've mentioned this earlier. Prepared rhetoric, where you come up with a figure of speech and a script, and it's all like really clever, and you might be very good at that side of things. But actually, we do know that Churchill's rhetoric and his skill was very lopsided, because he was brilliant at the prepared stuff and really hopeless going off piste. And one of his Conservative Party political rivals within the same party used to talk about Churchill having incredibly powerful artillery but not very mobile. He could wipe you out with the power of his rhetoric, but he wasn't very good at moving it around and using it at inopportune moments. So this idea of rhetoric being something that's only really complete if it comes with the willingness to take some risks, to perform, to throw it away, to do something off script. That's really important to these sessions on Highwire rhetoric. So I won't show you all the funny little drawings I did, but here's Churchill from my book. I won't show you that. That's an example of me making a big mess of something and falling over, literally falling on my face, which goes into the book because it's important to acknowledge it can go wrong. It's no good being one of those motivational people who says, yeah, just try it, just try it. Because actually sometimes you try things and it doesn't work and it hurts. And I've had that experience. It's still worth trying it. So I'm not going to lie and say, oh, it's good, just try it. That is an example of immense failure, because Cicero is known as this great giant of rhetoric. Cicero ended up having his head cut off because of something he wrote, as he said. And so, let's just be sensible. Even the best speakers don't do everything perfectly. George Eliot here. This is my drawing of George Eliot, the Victorian novelist. I drew this because George Eliot kept a commonplace book. This is something that I will be coming back to over the weeks to come. A commonplace book is a place to store writing and ideas to do with writing that you really love and that you want to come back to and that you want to make your own and that you want to think about more and so on. So I've got over here somewhere, I've waved this around previously. I did a course on how to write for the Idler Academy. You should look it up because I think this month it's on a big discount. So look up the Idler Academy, how to write, John Paul Flintoff, and you can do that course at a discount. But anyway, on that course I waved around my commonplace book where I've collected some wonderful flowers of rhetoric. And George Eliot did that. And many, many writers have done that over the years, had their own little collection. That's another one. I won't mention him now. I won't go into that now. I won't go into that now. Oh yeah, that's my book. I don't know why that's on this slideshow. It's not 99p a month only anymore. That was months ago. But that was a drawing by me. You can enjoy the drawing, but you won't get the discount. And that's a statue of Cicero, the one who got his head cut off, with a drawing of me and somebody else in the background, because I just wanted to say, look, public speaking is not only about these big shots who get statues, it's about any of us. I do sometimes run public speaking courses, and if you keep watching these videos, I'll probably mention those again at some point. Hope so, because I really enjoyed running those courses. I just need to get my act together. And we're now approaching the end of this short introduction. I should say that although I'm going to be doing these every week at 4:30 on Friday, 4:30 UK time, and they're open to anybody, should anybody actually want to turn up, I'm going to take them off being publicly available afterwards. Only this one, the introduction, is going to be available afterwards, because I want to give people a sense of why they might want to come along. You might want to come along to the subsequent episodes. But what I am going to do is make them available to people who support my work through a couple of things that I do that are paid for. And so, for the moment, this one is going to be open and available, and that's great. And the other ones that are coming up, if you want to be part of them, please don't forget to come along on Fridays at 4:30 p.m. Now I want to show you just a tiny bit more about improvisation before I go. I mentioned that I did this course in improvisation and that I didn't mention this, but you know what? Yesterday I was interviewed by someone else for his book about public speaking. And this is someone who wrote speeches for probably one of the most famous people in the world for a long time. Wrote speeches for a long time for one of the most famous people in the world. So the fact that this person even wanted to talk to me at all is great. But the reason I mention this is... Oh, hang on. I need to just find this thing. Okay, this will do. This is an article that I wrote a while ago. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically this drawing with colour added subsequently by me and my friend Joel, this drawing is a picture that I drew at the time of Keith Johnston, who kind of invented theatrical improvisation way back in the late 50s and 1960s. I even have to say different century, 1960s, at the Royal Court Theatre. And he was working with actors who are really good at the prepared stuff, the working from a script, the rehearsal, all that stuff, who were therefore all the more terrified of going on stage and doing things that without a script and not knowing what to do. So Keith came up with a huge number of different routines and disciplines and ideas for allowing people to be comfortable and safe on stage, even when they don't know what's going on. And I trained with Keith over a period of several years, not constantly, but I did courses with Keith over several years. And every time I did it, I drew pictures of what he was telling us and what he was teaching us. So in this one, let me see if I can get rid of myself off this screen. Okay, in this one, Keith talked about life belts for performers. One of the life belts is don't try to be good, because the trying makes you too much in your own head, too much effort. Just do it. Just do the thing. Just don't try to be good. Good anyway is a matter of opinion. What's good for someone is not good for another person, so don't try to be good. And then there are a few life belts that you can use when you're on stage. You can just change the emotion. You can name the thing that's going on, the problem, whatever it is, and you can get a volunteer from the audience. So this is about being very participative on stage, but I would say that those things also apply when you get a bit stuck in your writing in a variety of different ways. Now, I'm not going to go into that too much, but what I am going to say is that this is just one of dozens of drawings of bits of advice that I got from Keith when I was training with him, and which I've subsequently used in training other people in theatrical improvisation. What I would really love is if some of these sessions in weeks to come might include improvisational exercises, ideally with other people on screen. I don't want to be the only person on screen. Let's see if I can bring myself back. Can I bring myself back? I don't know. Let me see. Camera. Oh, there I am. Oh, hello. So I hope that in weeks to come there will be some exercises. I might be able to find a way to have someone else be on the screen with me, and I could play an improv game with them. We can make up some stories. We can do some writing together. And I hope that you might take part, whether it's through being on screen or like just in the chat. Being even in the chat at all is quite a nerve-wracking thing. I know, because, well, I can see nobody else has left a comment yet, just me. But that is fine. There's no pressure. No one has to do anything. So what I'm going to be doing, quick recap before I totally finish this thing, I'm going to be sharing ideas, routines, challenges from theatrical improvisation, that's the Highwire bit, the risky doing it in the moment thing, and rhetoric, the whole kind of history of rhetoric going back to Erasmus, Cicero, all those guys, mostly were guys, and sharing ideas about how to write that will be fun and interesting and interactive, I hope. Well, I think so. And to be honest, as you can see, because I've been chuntering away for 28 minutes and 26 seconds now, 26 seconds, I don't mind talking to myself. I've got a lot of this stuff to talk about, and I can use my notes and my pictures and my book and all sorts of stuff. It's just so much more interesting. It's so much more interesting for me and everyone if I am doing this in response to something that would be of interest and use to you. So please say hi, and I can do that thing, add it to the broadcast. Please say hello, introduce yourself, whether you're watching now or later, and let me know what you might like me to cover in this session and the sessions to come, whether it's about rhetoric, improvisation, or anything in between. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your time is precious, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.